Hello everyone! Today I am going to be running some Grime Kinship percent. This is basically the any percent for this game. The goal is to get the good ending of the game essentially. And we are going to be playing with a restricted rule set, which is effectively no major glitches. So yeah, let me jump right in and get started. This game has a very long intro cutscene that unfortunately we just have to sit through, but luckily it lets us skip a long part of it. So the actual cutscene part we can skip, but the very beginning we fall down from the heavens and shatter. This sets us up for a wonderful beginning here. This game is a Metroidvania, which is also a Souls-like, and you may have heard that word a lot thrown around for just about any type of game, but this game actually lives up to it. It has all the RPG elements that you would expect from a Souls game. You have several different stats, you have different weapons that scale with those stats, you can upgrade those weapons, you have a currency which works both for leveling your character and purchasing things like Souls work and Dark Souls games. It has extremely difficult boss fights, all the things that you would know and love from Souls games. But it also has Metroidvania elements. So the game actually has a handful of different abilities that you need to pick up throughout the game to access new areas and complete other platforming challenges. As you can see, it is a 2D game, but it does have some 3D elements, especially backgrounds, but actually also objects, including our character, are all actually modeled in 3D, which leads to some weirdness that we mostly won't be exploiting in this particular run. In good Metroidvania fashion, the game does start us off with a grounded dash, so we can actually go along the ground much faster. However, there is a trick to the regular dash, and that is the stamina bar that you'll see under my health bar in the top left. The green bar is stamina. When you dash, it costs a chunk of stamina, and you can actually only, with base stamina, only dash 3 times before you run out. Because of that, we've come up with a trick that is called shine dashing. And what this does is actually using a backdash and a jump to trick the game into thinking that we are doing a backdash when it's calculating our stamina cost, but actually does a forward dash as far as the actual movement goes. It allows us to move very quickly, but it is easy to mess up. It's a bit of always-on movement tech. You'll see me randomly sort of jumping or backdashing in certain points. Those are times when I've messed up a shine dash. The frame window for actually getting it is pretty narrow, but it does allow for much quicker movement through long, flat sections. So you'll be seeing it basically all throughout the run. All right, but yeah, we are in the beginning area. This is Weaving Cavity. It has sort of an introduction to a lot of different mechanics. One thing about the combat in this game is that it is highly parry-based. So what the game has been teaching me for a lot of these first few fights is how to parry and what that does. So you'll see this first enemy here. It's the first of these little mini-bosses that we'll fight a few of in this run. They are hunt points, and I'll describe that later. But the basic trick is that you can parry almost any enemy attacks. There are some attacks that you cannot, and those will be color-coded in red. So if you see red attacks, and hopefully this enemy will show us one like that, then we cannot parry that. Oh, interesting. So that's actually a quick kill to get this enemy, but we actually fell off with the enemy. The idea is to lure him off the edge, but we took a ride with him. In the end, that's fine, though. We don't really lose too much time from that. But yeah, we are just going through Weaving Cavity. I am going to be taking a couple of safeties on this route, including this here surrogate. These surrogates are save points, and they fully restore our health and also our breath, which is the bar that fills up, the yellow bar kind of shining next to the health and stamina values. That allows you to heal. So you can use it. You get 1 heal basically per save, and you can refresh it by absorbing enemies, which is the parry. So taking a surrogate refills that, and gives us a nice return point if we do end up dying. So I'll be taking a couple of extra surrogates that aren't part of the route, but other surrogates are part of the route because we intentionally will death warp back to them after completing certain sections. But yeah, we come up now on the first boss. The first boss of the game is, once again, a bit of a parry tutorial. Right at the start, you have to absorb those 2 arms that pop out of Amalgam in order to even start the boss fight. The boss has a variety of different attacks, some of which are absorbable, like that hand slam there, and some of which are not, like that hand sweep coming into us. The boss has a weak point in the eye, so on that hand sweep, we can actually jump onto the hand and get up to the eye. But for the most part, we're just looking to get in as many heavy attacks and absorbs as possible. This is one of the few bosses in the game that we're actually going to fight basically fully intended. There's... In almost all of the other boss fights in this game, we are going to be using a certain consumable item, which will... actually, let me not do the quit out here. Which will make the boss fights a bit quicker. Not to say that's an unintended strat, but it's one bit of Souls-like abuse that we're doing, using our consumables in proper places to speed up boss fights. There is a quit out that we can do to skip this absorb, which is pretty slow, but what this absorb actually does is you'll see this little number that's just appeared in the circle in the top left. That is called Ardor, and it actually ends up being extremely important to the run. By skipping the absorb, it would make that Ardor invisible for the rest of the run, which we do not want because you won't know what I'm talking about. But here we're doing a trick known as the Desert Cutscene Quit Out. Desert Cutscene Skip. There is a 40-second cutscene that plays there. If we walk into the trigger, by backdashing into it and quitting out, we get to avoid that entirely. All right. Now, for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to be killing and absorbing a lot of these enemies here. They are called wretches, and the reason that I'm doing that is that in this game, you can unlock traits which basically empower your character in various ways by absorbing enough enemies of a particular kind. The wretches here that I'm observing give a trait that boosts our damage by 40%. So even though they take quite a while to kill, it's very much worth it for the speedrun to get all of these wretches. However, it comes with a bit of a cost. So the wretches that we're killing, they give us that 40% extra damage only if we have max Ardor. So that's that number in that top left that I wanted to make sure was visible for this run. You can see it's at 44 right now. It goes to a max of 100. If we get up to 100 Ardor, then we get that full 40% damage bonus. If it's less than that, we get a little bit lower of a bonus, but still a bonus, as long as we have above 60 Ardor. The way that you get Ardor is by killing or absorbing enemies. So you can see with each absorb here, we're getting a total of 5 Ardor. We want to get up to 100 before the second boss, which we'll hopefully be doing, but shouldn't be too bad because there's actually quite a few enemies that we are going to be facing in between. The trick with Ardor, though, is that when you take a hit, you actually lose Ardor. So you have to be very careful about making sure that you don't take too many hits in order to keep your Ardor at or near the maximum. So that is a really tricky part of this run. Luckily, there are safeties that we can take that will make the Ardor easier to replenish right before boss fights. All right, so there I'm doing a bit of a weird trick called a Fossil Fist Jump, or Shoryuken. The way that it works is by interrupting the attack of this Fossil Fist at the right time. If we do it, it's a couple frame window, then we are able to get a pretty huge boost into the air, which allows us to get to a couple of places that we shouldn't be early. What I did here was also use this burst lantern I picked up to skip into Gloom Nest early. So I'm in an area I shouldn't be in, and we are going to make good use of that fact. So this surrogate here is part of the route. I'm going to use it to level up. I'm going to be picking up a weapon and also some consumable items in Gloom Nest, and we are going to use that to our great advantage on the the second boss of the game. So you will see very shortly how that goes. But yeah, the Fossil Fist that I picked up that we can use for those jumps, we can also use for fun little side movement, which can apparently also hit me, but that's fine. In the air, if you use them, it sends you downward at an angle very quickly, and that can be used for fast downward movement in a number of places. We'll be seeing it. It is honestly one of my favorite bits of speed tech in this game, and it's a lot of fun. All right, so we just picked up the consumables, and now we just picked up the weapon to go with them. The bow daggers there, that will be our weapon for the entire rest of the run. It is a very good weapon, and it is actually also good for one other purpose, which I'll explain quite a bit later in the run. But mainly it is going to be our source of damage for the entire run. We had to level up in order to have the stats to use it. I am low on ardor here, so I'll need to be careful to make sure I actually collect enough before we fight mothers, but that's okay. What we've done here is skip into the area that we're sort of actually supposed to be in, which is Lithic. This area is really the second intended area of the game, but we took a little bit of a strange path getting here because we went through Gloom Nest first. And that allowed us to get the volatile urns that we'll be using as well as the bow daggers. But it also, by taking that path, put us about 60% of the way through the area. So we skip a lot of the area that we should be in otherwise. I was trying to kill a couple extra of those, but as long as we're over 80 ardor, we'll get most of the damage bonus, so that's okay. All right. As we go through here, I will be absorbing a couple of extra enemies. These enemies are just to get the ardor bonus a little bit higher. We won't be at full for mothers, but above 90 is still okay. Okay, this is the second boss of the game, and it can be a little bit of a tricky one if in your casual playthrough. We're going to be using a very, very powerful consumable here to make it a little bit faster. So the first phase of the fight, we're fighting almost normally, and you'll see the power of the bow daggers. I'm using one consumable here, which is called a Volatile Eye. That is a pretty good consumable on its own, but there is a much more powerful consumable, which we'll be using in just a moment here on the second phase of the fight. So the traits we picked up so far increase our damage for reflected projectiles like those rocks. All right, here is the urn. So you can see that dealt 75 or so % of the mother's health bar, and that's actually without the full damage bonus from ardor. So the two traits we have are the one that gives us full 40% extra damage at full ardor, and another one which increases reflected projectiles. That makes this boss much faster than it would be otherwise. But you can see how bow daggers can be a pretty good weapon. They're very fast, they deal quite a lot of damage, and are just really smooth overall. All right, so that was Mothers, the first boss of the game. The volatile urns that we used in the second phase of the fight, that is going to be something that you're going to see quite a lot of over the course of this run. Those urns are extremely powerful. At a base, they deal 300 damage. With the 40% bonus from max ardor, we would get to 420 damage. There's another item we're going to pick up later in the run which actually doubles their damage, or doubles their base damage, and brings us to 720 damage. Compared to the bow daggers, which are dealing somewhere around 30 per slash, that is a pretty massive difference, and it allows us to speed up quite a few boss fights. So the only trick is that they are one-time use, and there are very few of them in the game, so we have to ideally get the kills quickly on our first try, but luckily it's not too bad to retry the bosses even without the urns if you need to. All All right, here I am going for a trick, which we call the Blob Lob Jank, and I got it first try. This is a very fun little trick where we throw a volatile blob off of the edge, and just doing another little bit of fun Fossil Fist movement there. We throw a volatile blob off the edge of a platform. By dropping with it, we can pull it in the air, which is the ability we just picked up from Mothers. If you pull in the middle of the air, it resets your fall speed. So that actually allows us to fall much further than we would otherwise and enter this area earlier than we're supposed to be. So that trick was found actually only recently and is one of the nicer time saves in the run. It saves about a minute with a couple of trade-offs by going the wrong way. All right, this surrogate is once again one that's actually in the route. We're going to intentionally take this and level up here. And we are going to be death warping back here later. So I need to make sure that I do not take another surrogate actually for the next little bit. This is Nerve Root. This is, again, mostly following the roughly intended path of the game. This game is a Metroidvania, but it does have a fairly linear beginning, where you are intended to go from Weeping Cavity, the first area, into Lithic, where we fight the Mothers, and then from there on to the World Pillar, and then Nerve Root, which is where we are now. We skipped the World Pillar with the Blob Lob Jank, but we still have Nerve Root and... Oh, that is not supposed to be a backdash. That is the joy of shine dashing, although I didn't even press jump there. Feaster's Lair is the next really big area that we're going to go into, and it's the area where we're going to get our next major ability. So that's where I'm headed. I am doing my best to not take too much damage, because I do need to carry this health for a little bit here. But luckily we can get heals throughout this area, so it's not too bad if you're careful. All right, so this is Feaster's Lair. The path through Nerve Root there was pretty much just the intended path. We didn't do anything super spicy, just moving quickly. Feaster's is much the same. We don't have any major skips in Feaster's. We are just walking very quickly through the path that is intended. In true Metroidvania fashion, if you know where you're going and don't have to stop and explore, movement through these areas becomes a lot quicker. This area is one that can be a little bit of a turnoff to people. There are lots of teeth that you're pulling out of the ground and out of the wall here, but it's the only area with really all of these teeth. So it's not too bad if you just close your eyes and, you know, wrinkle your nose for a bit. But yeah, we're just going through this area, again, mostly as normal, working our way up and to the next boss in the run, which is the Vulture. This boss is a tricky boss, and it's a bit of a race against the clock. What we're trying to do is beat Vulture before they do their first laser big spew attack, and that is effectively on a timer. I'm going to pause here to absorb one of these enemies, if I can, so that I can be at full ardor for the Vulture Fight. Thank you, sir. And we are going to go ahead and heal and also open a shortcut real quick, just in case things go sideways. One thing as well, you can pop over here. Come on. There we go. And pick up some breath. So you don't even need to be out of a heal before you do the fight, luckily. Okay. So, like I said, this is going to be a race. It is actually somewhat consistent, luckily. The trick we are going to be doing is using more of those volatile urns. So one here, right to the face, you can see dealt 1,260 damage. You might remember the base damage is 300. The reason that it was so much damage there is because Vulture has a weak spot. Unfortunately, I was slightly too slow throwing a second urn, so we did get this fly, which loses a bit of time for Vulture, but nothing too bad. Vulture's head is a weak spot in the first phase, and damage is tripled there. So it takes the 420 damage we should be dealing after the Ardor bonus, and triples that to 1260, which is a little bit more powerful than the 23 that we're dealing with the bow dagger's hits here. Oh no. Okay, so the way that the second phase of Vulture works there, it happens so quickly, but the way that it works is Vulture spawns 3 phases of adds. Those adds are all consistent in their spawns and what health they have, but their attacks are a bit random, and Vulture continues attacking throughout. Luckily, we cleared it pretty quickly. Okay. So here, normally I would shatter back, but I do not want to do that. I'm going to go and pick up a level lamb dust, which I meant to pick up on the way down. That is okay. Only takes a moment. The ability that we picked up from Vulture here was Air Dash, and that helps a lot because Air Dash makes movement just a lot better in general. Okay, so we're going to use this level M dust to return to the surrogate, and then we are going to turn around and head to Garden. But Air Dash allows us to get there and is really the main piece of movement needed in this run. I've tried to beat the game even with glitches without using Air Dash, and so far it doesn't seem possible. On the way, I'm stopping to pick up that piece, that little pickup there, and you may have seen it actually gave us about 6 different items. That is a slight oversight on the part of the developers that they kindly decided to leave in the game. So the bow daggers that we picked up in Gloom Nest, the weapon that we've been using, are accidentally placed twice in the map. Okay, that was an extremely difficult trick. You need to dash really late through spikes. So you dash just off the very edge of a platform in order to get through the spikes. Luckily, we got it first try. I thought I'd have more time to tell you about it, but we were simply playing too well, it seems. Constant problem for me, honestly. But anyway, the bow daggers were placed twice, which actually means that the second time you pick them up, they are a duplicate. The way that duplicates are handled in this game is they give upgrade materials instead of a duplicate item. And that's done because of New Game Plus. So in New Game Plus, you would normally pick up an item you already have and get upgrade materials as a reward. Because we are in the first cycle of the game, the second item shouldn't be there, but the developers were kind enough to leave it in, and we, in fact, are able to get our free upgrade materials. So we're going to use that to upgrade the 1 copy of the bow daggers that we do have in just a little bit here. So as we go through Garden, I am going to be picking up a couple of urns. Those are, once again, those consumable items that deal hundreds of damage. We have 5 of them total now, and that will be our count until the end of the run. We have a little bit of more fun Fossil Fist movement here. And I'm going to be picking up 1 additional pickup here, which is 5,000 mass, which is the currency in this game. That is going to be helpful for getting us some levels later and for upgrading our weapon. Oh, okay. That enemy can be in sort of obnoxious positions. Luckily, didn't get trolled too hard by it. That's 1 more Fossil Fist jump to pick up our last bit of upgrade material that we need. Those are called blood metal. They're strewn about the map. We are trying to get our weapon to the second from the last level possible. So we need a total of 4 blood metal splinters, 4 shards, and 2 blood metal chunks, which are generally late game items. We have so far picked up all of those things, actually. Luckily, the dupe bow daggers provides a lot of that. All right, we are going for all of the Fossil Fist movement because it is very fun, and I personally love it. All right, so we took that whole trip to Garden with that somewhat difficult double dash to enter the area. We did that out of order. We're supposed to actually pick up an ability from the Carven Palace, which is the next area we're going to, which is called Self-Pull. We will be getting that ability, but before we head over there, we decided to pick up the Strand of the Child. That is going to allow us to get a little bit further than the palace the first time we come in there, which is going to save us quite a bit of time. It also saves us a lot of dialogue with this character here, who we're only just meeting now. This is Shidra, and we'll be seeing a little bit more of Shidra later. Shidra is sort of your guide throughout the entire game when you're playing this casually. When you show up to World Pillar after killing mothers, you're supposed to talk to Shidra, and Shidra basically tells you to go and get an item from Vulture, and that's sort of the path that you're supposed to take. After you return that item from Vulture, Shidra tells you to head over to the right, which is where we're going now, to the Carven Palace. As a consequence of that dialogue, Shidra actually goes ahead and opens up a gate, which is previously closed. Unfortunately, because we skipped a trip, that gate is still closed, so we actually need a bit of a fun skip to get over it, which is the Fossil Fist jump into a Bellow Mace Heavy there. So I haven't talked about how the Bellow Mace is working at all, but the way that that works is when you use the Bellow Mace in the air, it has an animation which first rises up and then comes crashing down. If you interrupt it with an air dash while it's rising up, you get a little bit of extra height out of it. Combining that with the Fossil Fist jump from earlier gets us a lot of extra height, and we can actually go fully over that gate. So the gate is supposed to be open because we have actually gotten the item from Vulture, but because of the order that we've done things in, the gate is instead closed because we've sort of progressed too far in the quest, so the trigger for opening the gate never occurred. I need to take a short detour here to just pick up this level M, and I'm going to take another safety surrogate. So this is not part of the route, but we don't need to death warp anywhere right now, so this is fine. The level M we will be using to return back to a surrogate after our next boss. But yeah, this area is Servant's Path. It is one of the trickier areas of movement in the game, and it's very easy to get hit for lots and lots of damage here. So that safety surrogate, whoops, I didn't do my Fossil Fist movement. Oh no, I'm sorry. That safety surrogate is mostly just for, for extra caution. But there's lots of enemies through here. They throw spears at you. It's very rude. It's easy to fall. If you get hit by one of those red spears, they actually stick in your character and they are flaming. They will burn, and they will deal continuous damage to you while they are in your character. You have to dash to get them out. We never take any health upgrades at all in this run, so we are actually sitting on just 100 max health, despite our level being a little bit higher than it could potentially be. So we need to be very careful about things like that can deal kind of a lot of damage at once. All right, so we are into Carven Palace through that scary area, and we're going to take a little bit of a detour here. I'm going all the way over to the right and opening this gate. This is not supposed to be openable the first time you enter Palace, but because we picked up Strand of the Child early, we can just walk right through it. This is almost helpful. Unfortunately, we aren't able to actually skip Palace and the ability that you acquire there because it is hard required to beat the game. So we will be coming back into Palace in just a moment, but by doing this first, I am able to skip a very long dialogue sequence and very short arena fight with one of the more annoying characters in the game, Yawn. Yawn is kind of all throughout your casual playthrough in this game, but is not someone you'll see in the speedrun very much because we skip as much of Yawn as we can. Yawn likes to talk, and we don't have time to listen. So by grabbing this surrogate, I am going to be returning here after I finish the Carven Palace. So we'll be coming back after we just do a little bit of an entire area. That does mean I cannot take another surrogate in that area in Carven Palace because I do need to return to it. But luckily there are a lot of other shortcuts I can open up. So if we do take a death anywhere in Palace, it's easy to come back. All right, so I am simply turning around and walking straight back into Palace. This is a very long movement split with a lot of tricks in it, actually. So there's quite a lot to talk about. Like with the gate skip, there's going to be a couple of spots where I need to gain a little extra vertical height. And we are going to be taking a path through Palace, which, once again, is not exactly supposed to be the way you come through this area the first time. So I'm going to be using both the Fossil Fist jumps and the Bellow Mace heavies. So that is a Bellow Mace heavy to get up to this platform, where I pick up the Chisel Nails. We'll be talking about those more later. And here I'm going to do a Fossil Fist jump to skip up in this room, followed by a Bellow Mace heavy to get up to this ladder. This allows us to skip through a little bit of a winding room. It saves just a small amount of time. Now here is where the real bulk of the skips in Palace start. This is called Artisan Skip. This is the first half of the skip where we get up to this area. Normally you're supposed to use self-pull to get here. We don't have that ability yet. In fact, that's what we're going to go get. So we got the first half of the skip pretty cleanly. Going to do my best not to shatter here. You can avoid the electricity by just standing on the side of the platform. But that was the first half of the skip. It uses the Bellow Mace because we had to gain height mid-air. The Fossil Fist jumps can only be used from the ground. And then this is where the second half of the skips are happening. And just like with Gate Skip, we need extra height. So we're going to be using the Fossil Fists and then swapping to Bellow Mace in mid-air and then dashing to get up to that platform. The room we just were in is where a boss called the Artisan of Flesh spawns. We are not going to be fighting that boss. It is a mini-boss that is irrelevant to this run. But that is why those skips are called Artisan Skip. And it saves a pretty large amount of time compared to going through Palace like normal. I will be taking extra safeties when I come up on the boss in a minute. I didn't open the elevator, so I'll be dropping back down to do that, but I want to open the shortcut from Fidus, just in case things go wrong there. All of this is the more or less intended way to get to Fidus. I will be taking a heal. We just do it as quickly as we can. And then this room here is the path up to Fidus. So this door is a shortcut back to the boss, and there is an elevator which spawns just over here, which will allow us to return from the very bottom of Palace if we do die. So that's just a little extra safety that we take in order to save some time if we do need to come back here. All right, so we're going to go into the Fidus fight. I need to change out my weapons. We have to put the bow daggers back on, and I'm also going to be putting the chisel nails on. The way that the chisel nails work is they double the damage. Ideally, it's supposed to be used just to double the damage of the weapon for 10 seconds. However, they also work for consumables, and as you may remember from earlier in this run, we have pretty powerful consumables. By using the chisel nails, we are going to be bumping that 300 damage to 600, and that is further bumped up to 720 at full ardor or 705 at not quite full ardor by the Wretch trait. So we get a lot of extra damage here. I thought by being low ardor we would... Oh boy. So we get the full Fidus attack sequence there because I missed my parry. And this is why we take some safeties. Okay. Oops. Okay, I'm going to be using a consumable very quickly, just to get an additional heal. There we go. Beautiful, easy. Everything is fine. Okay, Fidus is a little bit tricky. I had to go quiet while I focused on that. There is a quick kill, but by being at not quite full ardor, I was slightly off on the damage for the phase transition, but everything is fine. This final phase is just an auto-scroller, where we are simply waiting for the spider hand to die. You can see its health bar just slowly decreasing. It will actually die on its own. You just need to make sure not to get hit to it. All right, so that was Fidus. Definitely not scary at all. The ability we get from Fidus is self-pull. And like I said, this is hard required to beat the game. So now that we have it, we are going to finally return to Beyond the Barrier. Which again is the intended next area after you pick up, well, really after you pick up Strand of the Child, but we did that early, so now we're coming here after self-pull. With self-pull, we can move through here. It allows us to travel to these little lanterns that are hanging in various places. There's also other self-pull points. They typically look like orange. They look like purple circles. But most of the ones that we'll be seeing here are these kinds of lanterns. So you can see here, getting up here without the self-pull ability is, as far as we currently know, impossible, even with glitches. But later on, you'll see even more clearly hard required self-pull moments. But that's the reason that we had to backtrack and go back into Palace, despite being able to get to Beyond the Barrier more quickly. So we head through here and into Cenotaph City, and Cenotaph is an area that is honestly absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my favorite parts of my casual playthrough, but it's lore-wise a little bit strange. The idea behind this city is that this particular individual here, who we will be seeing more of very shortly, and everyone else who lives in this city has been sort of long awaiting our arrival. We haven't talked at all about the lore, but basically we are a black hole. Our head there is actually a black hole, and when we absorb enemies, we are sucking them into the black hole, basically. This city basically knew that someone like us was coming, and tried to build a beautiful city to be destroyed by us. It's very strange, but everyone's very happy to see us, and no one's actually fighting us here. We are taking one more safety surrogate here, because the next boss is one of the hardest in the game. It is the final performance, and the idea behind this boss is that that lovely individual we met at the entrance to the city wants to have one last performance to send off the city, really. And is basically has choreographed this big, beautiful dance, lots and lots of other performers, and is going to fight us in a rather aesthetically pleasing way. This is one of my favorite fights, not only in this game, but in any game. And it's actually the basically only fight in this game, in this run, that we do without using any volatile urns. So this fight we do fully normal. Have the entire fight just the way we should. All right, that was a pretty good first phase. Now TFP is going to come down and start to fight us themselves. TFP has a lot of very quick attacks. The ones that are red cannot be parried, and you have to dodge. The ones that are not red can be parried, and that is generally what you want to do. It is one of the trickiest fights in the game. Very easy to take a couple of hits, and because we're on really low health, again, we haven't taken any health upgrades at all, 2 hits can be all it takes to die to TFP. But that was a pretty good fight. Luckily, it is very consistent. It is a very fun fight, one of my favorites, and honestly, it's just a great time. But yeah, so that's TFP. We go ahead and absorb not just TFP like we have been with other bosses, but actually all of Cenotaph City here. So this absorb cutscene actually breaks the entire city. It's the most drastic change to the actual map out of all of these absorbs. But we're not quite done yet. That was the final performance, but it wasn't the final boss. Cenotaph City has been built and waiting for us to destroy it, but our goal is not just to destroy them, it's to destroy actually this entire world that we're in. The ability we got from TFP is double jump, and that is going to now allow us to get through the next platforming sections, and there are quite a few minutes of platforming ahead of us. So almost all of this requires self-pull and double jump, although almost none of it hard requires air dash. Sadly, couldn't quite finish it without it, but one day we'll find a way. This bit is a very fun platforming section. It is called the Pale Sky, and the idea behind this, we're in sort of a body. We're in a celestial body, but it's more of a body than most celestial bodies. This area is supposed to represent the brain, from what I understand. We travel between sections of this through self-pull. I don't know how to describe it better than holes in the wall. So you can see at the end of each of these areas, in the middle we have these lanterns that we're pulling to, but at the very end we have these little holes that we can actually pull ourselves through as well. That is where we really need self-pull to get through all of those things. So unfortunately, that is a hard required ability. But yeah, this is a fully 5-minute platforming section. It is very difficult, but also somewhat relaxing. I really like the platforming in this game, and it feels really smooth. We're doing, once again, platforming on a lot of really little platforms that like to disappear on you. These all disappear after you land on them, so you have to keep moving very quickly. One thing that's nice about this area is it actually gives you a full heal every time you take any damage. So you actually cannot die here. It is one of the few areas of the game where they really just wanted you to focus on the platforming and think of it as a bit of a platforming challenge rather than worry about having to worry about your health and taking a death here. It is a lot of fun. Honestly, again, one of my favorite bits of the game. Lots of spikes and lots of little platforms, but you get to fully use all the abilities that you've picked up. There are more abilities. Like any Metroidvania, there's many abilities in the game, and the any % run doesn't see all of them. So there are some other abilities that we didn't pick up, but all the ones that we've done are all the ones that are required for the game, and the reasons are mostly this platforming section here. So as we go through here, we are going to work our way to the very end of this platforming. Once we exit that area and get into the area that I'm now in, the exterior, it is actually no longer the case that I get a free heal with every bit of damage we take. However, there are breath spots throughout, and those do give us free heals, basically. What I did there was a diagonal dash to get through a bit of spikes to save just a little bit of time. That's possible if you are falling far enough that you are crumbling, basically starting to get to the point of shattering. All right, and we're through the last platforming. I did a little cutscene skip there at the end. Saves about 10 seconds just hopping over a cutscene trigger. And we are going to take this surrogate once again as a safety. So we have one more boss to go. And you will never believe who it is. Someone that we haven't actually seen a lot of in this run. But if you played this game casually, you probably saw a lot more of them. Now we've seen exactly one moment of this, and the boss in question will be Shidra. Shidra normally, again, acts as your sort of guideline, as you know, your compass, telling you where to go and what to do. But actually, it turns out that the entire time Shidra's been sending you around to do stuff, it's been in order to create this device that they've now trapped us in. So it's actually a bit of a betrayal here. Shidra doesn't want us to destroy the world. How evil of them. And they are instead trying to stop us. Combining the items that we have given them, they create this orb, and they are going to try to actually sap away all of our health. However, we can fight back. So this is a point where you get basically two options. You can either let Shidra win and just sit here and die, or you can fight back and fight Shidra and try to kill them. One is called the weakness ending, which is where you just die. The other is called Kinship, which is what we are going for. Basically, no one runs weakness, because this boss fight is a much cooler way to finish the run than simply sitting there and letting Shidra kill you. But yeah, this is the final boss fight. It's one of the more fun boss fights in the game, in my opinion, and we do have a strat we're going to be going for called the Shidra phase skip. So Shidra normally has two distinct phases. One phase that starts, you know, right at the beginning of the fight that we're seeing here, and then one that starts right at half health. And during that phase, Shidra will summon some adds, and sorry, I have to focus because this is where I need to get the phase skip. Shidra will summon adds and try to... Oh, we got the puppet skip. Nice. Okay, so not only did we get the phase skip, we actually skipped the entire ad summoning phase as well. So normally Shidra would summon adds and actually try to heal while we deal with the adds. And it takes a very long time. By dealing a ton of damage using those urns that we talked about, we can actually skip all of that. The puppet skip, which I just got there, is really tight, but if you deal enough damage right at that 50% threshold, if you deal it very quickly before Shidra can even start summoning adds, then you're able to skip it entirely. So that's what we got there. And if you deal slightly less, then you still get the puppet spawning, but Shidra will die immediately after spawning the adds, so it's not that much less time, luckily. But yeah, that's the Shidra fight. The final phase there, we just need to absorb Shidra's arms 4 times. It's a little bit of a callback to the very first boss in the game, which tries to slap you with their arms, and you have to absorb them. So I really like that, actually, as a final little callback here. Once we've defeated Shidra, we can go ahead and absorb them, and now nothing is standing between us and being able to absorb really the entire world. So that is what we're going to do now. There is a slightly comically long elevator ride here. We just sit here for like a full 30 seconds while this skelevator just kind of sort of climbs up, and then we have one more little platforming section. This platforming section is really fun. There's a lot of little tricks, mostly using the bellow mace to gain a little bit of extra height and skip small portions of it. It's a nice little cooldown end to the run after that final boss fight, which can be a little bit scary, a little bit tricky, a little bit fun. But yeah, there's a lot of places where we just want to be making sure that we are dashing at the right heights. and using our bellow mace as needed. It's a pretty fun split. So you can see we're also using the bow dagger special. It works the same way that the bellow mace works, but it uses a little bit less stamina and gives a little bit less height. So sometimes I'll be opting for that instead of the other way. But for the most part, I go ahead and use the bellow mace. And each of these saves only a few seconds, but they're pretty fun. All right, so pretty smooth there. That was all of the bellow mace jumps, and we have just one last area that we need to go through. It is the bane of my existence. It's one very long flat area where we suddenly need to shine dash about 20 times to get to the final trigger. But once we get here, that is time, and we can now absorb the entire world. So this is the Kinship ending. We have reached really the true ending of the game. Pretty decent there, 50 minutes. With all the safeties, we will take it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching this. This was definitely a fun run. I think Grime is a great game. I think more people should try it. It's got a blossoming speedrunning community. There's lots of active discussion and rerouting happening lately. We just recently rerouted this entire thing to get that early strand. And it's just a lot of fun. Check it out. It's a great game.